So free agency has finally cooled off, but the Philadelphia Eagles never stop working, and today we have a proposed mock trade that would send one of the Eagles' highest paid players to an NFC juggernaut. The question is, should they actually pull the trigger? Well, we'll go over all the details of the trade, but I think this move would not only change the landscape of the current team for years to come, but it would represent an overall mindset shift that we are currently seeing implemented. So we'll get into it all and talk about when we could potentially see this happen. We'll break it down, but welcome into A to Z Philly. I'm RB. Do me a favor, like this video, go down below and subscribe to the channel. Help us continue to grow. You know, the Eagles are just such a special team. Like this year, this franchise's 2024-25 Eagles will forever be remembered, man. They were so special. And the crazy part about it is that they're being built to go back and do it again this next season. It's been a very interesting offseason so far, but I think we are seeing the blueprint laid out for the grand master plan laid out by Howie Roseman. Now, we'll start it off with a team that doesn't have any grand master plan, and that is the New York Giants, who have signed Jameis Winston to a 2-year deal, right? We're hearing about Russell Wilson. We're hearing about Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers goes and visits with Pittsburgh. Then he probably went on like a darkness retreat and got high or something. I don't know. And the Giants thought it was a great, wonderful idea to sign Jameis Winston. No knock on Jameis, right? He's still a serviceable quarterback. You know, he's a really good guy. He's matured a lot during his career. He's funny. His personality is must-see TV. But we were literally at Super Bowl Media Week watching Saquon get asked by Jameis, where should I sign? Saquon told him the Giants. Saquon is the gift that never stops giving. And he sent Jameis Winston to the New York Giants. They gave him a 2-year, $8 million deal. Every time I think I can get a good laugh from the Dallas Cowboys, the Giants just swoop right in. The Cowboys are like the same original joke that's still funny, but it doesn't hit the same way it did the first time. You know, whereas the Giants just keep on doing things like this that make me laugh. And even if the Giants go out and draft a quarterback, which they probably will now, I still think they're going to play Jameis Winston on day one because that is how incompetent that organization is. And I'm going to laugh all the way to the bank when the Eagles go out there and eviscerate them, force them into a ton of bad throws. 2 easy wins coming up on the schedule next year. But let's talk about a Philadelphia Eagle that is headed on his way out. And speaking of the Detroit Lions, which we'll get into here in a few minutes, they have signed away Avonte Maddox on a 1-year deal. Avonte is a Detroit native, so he goes home. And believe it or not, you know, it feels like he's older, but he's only 28. And I give a lot of credit. I tip my cap to Avonte Maddox because this guy was a pro's pro. Speaking of Super Bowl Media Week, we heard Christian Parker, the Eagles DB's coach, talk about Avonte Maddox in a really good praising manner. He said that he was one of the best players he's ever coached in his entire life. And you think about Avonte, I mean, at one point I thought this guy was going to switch from nickel corner to safety and just be the future safety of the team. But then he had like 5, 6, 7 injuries that racked up over a couple years. Then he was cut 2 or 3 times. He was benched this year, and he never complained. He just did his job, did his role, and I'm super happy that after 7 years with this franchise, after being a 4th-round pick, he goes in and makes one of the biggest plays in the Super Bowl on a 4th down stop, and he ends up getting a ring. So very, very happy for Avonte Maddox and wish him the best in his future. But we have to stay on the Detroit Lions because they have been linked in a potential trade with our Philadelphia Eagles. Here's a report that came out a couple weeks ago. We already talked about this, right? Jordan Schultz said the Eagles were open to trade talks involving Dallas Goedert and Bryce Huff. Still don't know what's going on with Goedert, but Bryce Huff is starting to make some airwaves, okay? And here was the proposed trade that was put out by Bleacher Report. The Lions would receive Bryce Huff, and the Eagles would receive a 4th-round pick and a 7th-round pick in the 2025 draft. What do we think? What do we think? Let me know your thoughts down below. Is Bryce Huff going to be a Philadelphia Eagle in this upcoming season? Now, Bryce Huff put this on his own Instagram story a couple weeks ago. It was a guy holding up a poster that says, "The beginning is near." What does he mean? A new beginning? Does he mean he's on his way out? I mean, I can't blame him if he does. All right. And if we go over and look at this article where this proposed trade was put out, let's talk about this, right? Vic Fangio used Bryce Huff very sparingly. He only played over 47% of the snaps in only 3 of his 12 appearances, and he did not suit up for the Super Bowl. He got his ring. He did what he had to do, got a bag. But right now, it seems like it's going to be very smart to move on from Bryce Huff. Eagles signed the Memphis product to a sizable deal a year ago. He has a $7.5 million cap number this year and no guaranteed money left on the deal after 2025. Now, let's look at a little bit of a breakdown from that, okay? Shout out to Jake Rabbit Eye here on Twitter putting this out. Per Eagles X's and O's on Twitter, who did the math. If Bryce Huff is traded today, the Eagles will incur a dead cap charge of $12.9 million. His current cap hit is $7.5 million. So if you subtract the two, you get a loss of $5.4 million cap space in 2025. However, there's a bunch of intricacies here. If there's a guaranteed option bonus and there's other stuff, could be more. But it was originally being reported that there was a dead cap hit of $29 million. That's why in the last week or two, some people were saying there's no way in heck how he's going to get off Bryce Huff. But according to Eagles X's and O's here, the loss on the cap space would only be $5.4 million. So where does that take my mind? Well, I think the Eagles are kind of waiting and seeing what they do in the draft. Do they go with an edge early? Do they go in the first couple rounds? I'm sure they will. And that is exactly why the Eagles need to trade Bryce Huff. Right now, the cap is a very confusing thing. And for somebody that also covers basketball, it's like trying to rewire your brain, right? It's two different things. And Howie does cap magic. He reworks these things in so many different ways. And, it's like void years and bonuses. And he just knows how to manipulate it perfectly. That's why he's so damn good at his job. But if this is true, and the Philadelphia Eagles can get off of Bryce Huff and they can find a team, even if it's the Detroit Lions who are willing to take on Bryce Huff, I think they have to do it. And I think it speaks to more of a mindset shift, right? As it says here in the article, the Philadelphia Eagles had to sit their highest paid player in the Super Bowl as a healthy scratch. Now, I'm not saying he's washed. I'm not saying he's the worst player in the world. He's still in his mid-20s. He's very young. But Bryce Huff making $17 million per year on a team where his skill set is not maximized, right? If he goes somewhere else, I'm sure he can be a serviceable player. But you think about the system, the philosophy that Vic Fangio has built, and it's like there's just no meeting in the middle. Bryce Huff is not fit for Vic Fangio's system. Even go back the year before when the Eagles signed him, Bryce Huff had a double-digit sack year for the New York Jets, but he was more of a pass rush specialist. He still didn't play a lot of snaps with the New York Jets. He was more of a third down pass rusher, and he's not really stout at being able to stop the run. And to be in Vic Fangio's system, you have to be versatile. You have to be dynamic and really good at everything. And honestly, it made me respect Vic Fangio a lot because early on, he was benching Bryce Huff. He wasn't one of those coaches that just says, hey, you're the highest paid player on the cap sheet, so you have to play the most snaps. No, he went and did what optimized the team. And you look at the Philadelphia Eagles snap counts this year. I mean, Bryce Huff only played a total of 27% of the snaps. And honestly, that number is kind of inflated because you think about the last game of the season where he played over 80% of the snaps. And like the article said, he only had 3 games this year where he played over 45% of the snaps. The guy did not fit the system. I understand the Eagles lost a couple defensive linemen. They're going to need some edge rushers. But honestly, I just don't see it working here with Bryce Huff. I think he's kind of off the ship at this point. He started to get a little bit of momentum late in the season. Then he got hurt again. And like I said, he just never fit the mold. So I think what Howie Roseman is going to do is go in the draft and say, hey, I just showed that the formula worked, right? I drafted Jalen Hunt. The year before I drafted Nolan Smith. I know how to draft these guys from the good schools, and these guys are going to save me money because I won't have to pay them for a couple years. So I think he's going to go out, draft a couple more in this draft, and find a way to move on from Bryce Huff. And I think it makes total sense. And overall, again, it kind of embodies that mindset shift where the Eagles are just trying to get younger and not have to worry about paying all these guys at the same time and not have, the James Bradburys and the Bryce Huffs of the world on the contract books for the next couple years. So that's where I'm at with that. Give me your thoughts down below. Lastly, a quick shout out to DeVonta Smith. He was on this 7 p.m. in Brooklyn podcast. Here's a quote about Jalen Hurts. He says, when we talk to each other like that, we feed off of one another's energy. Jalen Hurts loves when we tell him what we're seeing, and people think it's us getting on him, but it's not. showing that Jalen Hurts knows how to take criticism and has a good relationship with his receivers, which we all know, but the outside world tries to, paint it in a different picture. Also, DeVonta literally utters the same quote Jalen had this year. Just because we didn't pass the ball last season doesn't mean we could not pass the ball. It's just about utilizing what is most effective. And I love that these guys are on the same page. And I love even like that clip after the Super Bowl where AJ and Jalen come together and just have that moment. I mean, it just shows a lot of maturity from these guys. And I'm sure it hasn't always been sunshine and rainbows, but they're professionals. They want to win and they're locked in. And lastly, just to speak on the whole vibe of this offseason with a lot of guys like A.J. Brown saying they're not satisfied, DeVonta Smith agrees with A.J. Brown that winning a Super Bowl is but he says there is no better feeling than seeing a defensive back look defeated. So this guy's pure domination. He has achieved so much in his mid-20s. I mean, a Heisman, a national championship, and a Super Bowl, and he's always been the underdog here because of A.J. Brown, except for that first year. But shout out to DeVonta. Shout out to the Birds. We'll see what happens moving forward. I love this team, and I think they're destined to go back for another one. So give me all your thoughts down below in the comment section. As always, appreciate everybody for tapping in. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you all on the next one.